For many people, travel is a search for authenticity. Perhaps you spend most of your year working and living in a land of highways and strip malls, where much of the time life is just blah. Boring, unfulfilling, whatever adjective works for you. Driving to work in the mornings, you find yourself yearning for a few weeks off so that you can explore the world. When your vacation comes, you catch a plane to a faraway city and step out of the airport, hoping to be buffeted from all sides by the stiff breeze of authentic human experience. Maybe you even hope to have this profound, authentic experience in Barcelona, second city of Spain. Well, if that's the case, I've got some bad news for you, because everything in Barcelona is fake. Gothic neighborhood? Fake. The beach? Fake. The boobs on that one girl you like from the gym? Well, I don't know. Maybe you should strike up a conversation and find out. You could ask her. Don't ask her. I don't know. This isn't dating advice. I'm Daniel Welsh, and this is the Spain to Go podcast. Not dating advice. It's actually the best podcast in the entire multiverse for all things Spain. I will not be talking about boobs anymore in this podcast. However, I might use the word thong once. In any case, here's a rundown of some of the lies, exaggerations, and outright fakery you might enjoy in the city I call home. First up, Gothic neighborhood. It's not Gothic. You know Gótico, our quaint medieval neighborhood around the cathedral? Well, it turns out that calling it Gothic is just a sort of slogan invented to attract tourists in the 1920s. For example, Puente del Obispo, that little bridge in Gothic style, connecting two buildings on Carril del Bisbe near the cathedral. Well, that was inspired by Gothic architecture, but actually built in 1928. The architect who designed it, Joan Rubio, even went on the record saying, "El barrio gótico no existe." Gothic neighborhood doesn't exist. He would know. He built the thing that is one of the most photographed monuments in Barcelona, that little bridge that we like to imagine is ancient. It is in fact less than 100 years old. A survey of buildings in Barcelona's historical center made around the time that the Puente del Obispo was being built recorded a total of 5 buildings that were actually Gothic. The cathedral itself, it must be said, is partially Gothic. Constructed in a Gothic and Neo-Gothic style, it was actually built in bits and pieces over a period of over 600 years. Finally finished in 1913, parts of it are legitimately Gothic. Now, if you're like me, the words Gothic architecture might not mean much to you. The difference between 14th century actual Gothic and 20th century Neo-Gothic might not be something you're contemplating as you sip your gin and tonic on some quaint old plaza. Some of the nice buildings turn out to be Baroque. I have no idea. I'm not an architecture expert, and maybe you aren't either. Maybe you just want to see something interesting. Well, you're in luck. Barcelona definitely has a lot of cool buildings. It's got some old churches that are worth visiting. It's got Sagrada Familia, of course. It's got an old city center with narrow streets, cobblestones, and the occasional gargoyle or coat of arms carved into a facade. But strictly speaking, most of it is not Gothic. Next, let's talk about the Arc de Triomphe, which actually is not an Arc de Triomphe. It commemorates no triumph at all. Now, I don't mean to hate on the Arc. I live nearby, and it's an impressive monument. The way the light hits the red bricks at various times of day, the whole avenue full of people having fun in front of it, the sculptures around in the area, the statues, the elaborate modernist lampposts on the Paseo leading up to it. It's a cool thing, but strictly speaking, once again, it does not commemorate any sort of triumph. The fact is that Barcelona hasn't had very many military triumphs in the past few centuries. Sad, but true. Anyway, our beloved arc was built in the Neo-Mudéjar style. Neo-Mudéjar, actually sort of a modern throwback to the style that the Muslims were doing a long, long time ago here in many parts of Spain. It was built in this style for the 1888 Barcelona World's Fair, otherwise known as the Universal Exposition. And all it was meant to be was the entrance gate to the fair. So if you're looking for triumph, it's best to look elsewhere. For example, the world's highest triumphal arch is in Mexico City and celebrates the Mexican Revolution. And the best known, the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, commemorates those who died in the French Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars. Barcelona's arch, then, is more decorative than triumphal, but it is a good example of how Barcelona, the city, has been willing to change throughout the years in order to attract international visitors during these important events. The biggest example of that, of course, happened in 1992, and it's what we're going to talk about next. Barcelona's beach was imported from Egypt. Yes, it's true. There comes a point in every great Madrid versus Barcelona, which is better to live in debate, when many Spaniards will just throw up their hands and say, yes, but Barcelona has the beach. That's mostly the end of discussion. So much so that when we moved here, I spent the first 2 years living near the beach in Barceloneta. I look back now and think that was a bad idea. Barceloneta is not nearly as nice as the neighborhood we're in now, but my logic was simple. Why move halfway across Spain only to live in Gracia, for example, 45 minutes away from Barcelona's one positive attribute? Madrid is great, but Barcelona has more sand, is generally the argument that people make. In hindsight, I'm ashamed that I fell for it. In any case, did you know that Barcelona's beaches aren't natural? In fact, they were largely constructed using Egyptian sand before the 1992 Olympics. The famous 1992 Olympics that put Barcelona on the map for international tourism. For a long time previous to those Olympics, the train tracks went right along the coast. They still do, actually, if you head up towards Badalona and Costa Brava. In some neighborhoods, the area between the train track and the sea was, in the words of the official Barcelona website, basically a garbage dump. Apparently a lot of shady things happened around those train tracks. For the Olympics, they put the train tracks underground, and now we have much more space on the seaside. Historically, the Barceloneta area did have its share of rowing clubs, health spas, and an institution called La Escuela del Mar, which was destroyed by bombs in the Civil War. You can Google around and you can see some very old photos online. It looks like the beach during the early 20th century consisted of about 5 meters of gravel. Not very impressive. Of course, the beach as we now know it, full of tourists in thongs and flip-flops, is obviously not a concept that would have worked well in the ultra-Catholic Spain of yore. Baños de San Sebastián, one of the health spas at the beach 100 years ago, allegedly caused something of a scandal by allowing men and women to go swimming together. But that was a long time ago. The 92 Olympics changed everything in Barcelona. The city brought in tens of thousands of cubic meters of sand from Egypt. They extended the seawalls and they built the beaches we now know and perhaps even love. It may not last forever, though. City Hall has been complaining for years that the beaches are losing sand and shrinking at an alarming rate, especially during the massive storms that batter the city every winter. The Spanish government has promised to do something about it eventually, with a plan to bring the sand back from where it's floated out to sea. El País, the newspaper, suggests that they might start in 2024, so just 2 more years before this problem might be solved. Anyway, is fake necessarily all that bad? I don't know. As I've said before, I like Arc de Triomphe. The Gothic neighborhood is pretty cool, and I've spent plenty of time at the beach throughout the years. If you're into that kind of thing, what does it really matter where the sand came from? The search for authenticity seems to be a yearning for something traditional, something with many generations of history behind it. If people have been doing it for 1,000 years, it must mean something, right? Well, maybe, but I suspect that most traditions just aren't that old. The Spanish cuisine you get in a nice restaurant today probably isn't too close to what Don Quixote was eating. You can find some stuff online. In Don Quixote's day, they would eat roast cat, a lot of organ meat. Not stuff you would really want to eat these days. In any case, even the oldest of traditions isn't immune to change and isn't immune to being repackaged and commodified as a show for tourists. Flamenco, anyone? So, my recommendation is enjoy your life and don't worry too much about it. Sometimes a beach is just a beach. That's about all I've got for today. Incidentally, if you want to see something that's legitimately old, try watching a bullfight. Bullfighting goes back thousands of years, but logically, many people's opinions in the last few thousand years have changed about the spectacle of killing bulls as a public event. In any case, you can't even see a bullfight in Catalonia because it's been banned. They banned it about 10 years ago. Flamenco also seems to be at least a few centuries old, but any idea about the roots of flamenco is apparently just a hypothesis. There's not a lot of actual history. And, it must be said, many Spaniards are not excited about the Spain, land of bulls and flamenco stereotype. But that's a story for another day. I think episode 2 or 3 here is actually about Spanish stereotypes. If you would like more, you can also swing by expatmadrid.com for quite a bit of news from Madrid and Barcelona, everything you need to know and want to know about life in Spain. That's it. I hope you have a great day wherever you are in the world, and we'll talk soon. Bye.